this week's edition of World Crisis Radio. It's December 3rd as we are taping our program, and we have Butcher Barkey in Afghanistan. Warmonger Barkey is celebrating the first anniversary of his infamous, bellicose, militaristic, imperialistic speech at West Point, where he laid down a policy of war against Pakistan, creating the third war to go with Afghanistan and Iraq. The U.S., make no mistake, is now at war in Pakistan and has been now these last 12 months of the rolling year. So attempting to mimic Bush's demagogic appearance in Iraq for Thanksgiving 2003. Remember that? The rubber turkey that Bush was posing with, pretending to be the cornucopia of good things for these poor guys and women who were over there. Well, Obama's trying to do that. On the home front, the Genocide Commission, the Cat Food Commission, the BS or Bowles-Simpson Commission has failed in its attempt to come up with a unified genocide proposal against the American people. Their combination of gouging of social services and tax increases of the regressive, despicable type has garnered only 11 votes out of the 18. So there's a resistance group of 7. We're still checking to see exactly who voted for what, because apparently they avoided an open vote. And perhaps this will come out certainly in the next day or two through various kinds of leaks. But I think the overwhelming story, of course, remains the financial crisis and indeed the inability of the U.S. ruling class to show a way out of the crisis. Because remember, behind this current terrible situation we have, and indeed it's reflected in these ruling class organisms like the BS Cat Food Genocide Commission, the U.S. ruling class can't decide what to do. They don't know what to do. Well, here we know what to do. We'll tell you what to do. We'll tell you exactly what to do. You want an economic recovery? Come here. We'll tell you everything about it. We'll give you more than enough to get it going. Now, the really big news this week, the Federal Reserve, the infamy, the crime, the treason, the outrageous plutocracy ruled by financier elites, the paroxysm of globaloney and the casino economy, the prevalence of hot money, and derivatives über alles. Derivatives über alles. That's the new motto for the Federal Reserve. Not new, of course. It was put in there by Bubbles Greenspan, but now we have helicopter Ben Bernanke. So this week, not voluntarily, but as a result of being compelled and coerced and obliged to do it, this super secret tentacle of Wall Street and the City of London, and indeed of the world oligarchy, the so-called Federal Reserve, has now revealed some of the special lending they did under special and exigent circumstances back in 2008. What you see here is the idea of an international cabal or cartel of finance capital which controls the Federal Reserve. There's just no other way to put it. The only answer to that is the nationalization of the Fed. Put a cordon of tanks around the building. Arrest these characters as they come in. Set up some concertina wire outside the door of the Fed. That's what a real president would do. Seize the institution and run it in the public interest. Don't abolish it, because otherwise that power will go by default to the same people that are controlling it today, except that they won't have any limitations whatsoever. There'll be no way to force it out into the public. You'll actually be going out of the frying pan and into the fire. No, abolishing the Fed, returning to the free market, that's an obscene joke. The free market will be signed by Jamie Dimon of J.P. Morgan Chase, Pandit the Bandit of Citibank, Moynihan of Bank of America, Blankfein of Goldman Sachs, Mack of Morgan Stanley, and the rest of the members of this cabal, this clique that runs things. Now, we want to devote full attention to this. Perhaps the leading headline, as the Financial Times of Thursday instructs us, Europe's banks tapped the Fed. Foreign financial institutions were helping themselves to cash at the same time that Detroit was struggling. There was no credit for Silicon Valley, no credit for the biotechs, no credit for the American farmer, no credit for local business, for automobile repair shops, dry cleaners, restaurants, and all kinds of other institutions which are actually productive, although on a small scale, but nevertheless have to be saved because they provide vital services, unlike derivatives merchants that provide no social function of any type. Let's look at some of the facilities. They came up with a whole alphabet soup. Now, remember, in the New Deal, you had that good alphabet soup, Agricultural Adjustment Act, AAA, WPA, Works Progress Administration, that meant jobs for 4 to 8 million people, PWA, Public Works Administration, that built the Hoover Dam, the Bonneville Dam, and other key projects of infrastructure, TVA, Tennessee Valley Authority. That was the alphabet soup that let you live and made you strong. But, of course, now in the era of toxic assets, poisonous, kited, bankrupt derivatives, we have the new alphabet soup. And the new one that we can look at first, TAF, Term Auction Facility. We have the Primary Dealer Credit Facility, PDCF. Let's look at the TAF. We'll go through this entire list of the poisonous alphabet soup that Bernanke and company came up with. TAF, Term Auction Facility. Well, who cashed in on this? Bank of America, 212 billion smackaroonies of Fed money, meaning public money. Now, of course, it's not taxpayer money. It's the fact that they have the ability to manufacture this money out of thin air. And there's nothing wrong with that. It can become a great thing in the hands of somebody like, a program like mine. But when you're doing this to bail out derivatives bandits, hedge fund hyenas, and asset strippers, and save, indeed, we're going to see, hedge funds were saved that they could come back and rip you off another day. Bear funds, right? People who, the same people who destroyed Lehman Brothers were rewarded in the crisis. They were bailed out of the crisis they themselves helped to create with public credit. This is public credit. Any government has the ability to create credit. The question is how and where does it go? But let's proceed in order. We don't want to let our indignation boil over. Bank of America cashed into the tune of $212 billion. What have they been doing for you lately? Did they give you a surcease on your foreclosure? Did they remit some of those fees? No. And indeed, Bank of America, if you look at their stock chart, it points towards only one outcome: early demise, not going to be around. But maybe the most unbelievable is the prevalence of foreign banks borrowing from the Fed under these emergency facilities. Barclays Bank, this is another ironic one. Barclays Bank was going to buy Lehman Brothers until the deadline on that fateful Sunday, 14th of September, 2008. And then, of course, this British regulator that nobody had ever heard of came out of the woodwork after a hibernation of about 3 centuries and said, no, you can't do that. You've got to have a vote of the bloody shareholders. And that, of course, was the stab in the back, the usual policy of the City of London towards Wall Street. Barclays Bank, as part of the British banking establishment that did this, was rewarded to $232 billion, $232 billion of U.S. public credit as a thank you for destroying Lehman Brothers. We'll be back in a minute on World Crisis Radio.